In the busy morning crowd at Phoenix Airport, no one paid attention to the K-9 tugging hard at his leash, barking non-stop at a simple Navy suitcase. People shook their heads, even chuckled, thinking the dog was just acting up. But minutes later, when the suitcase lining began to tremble, as if something inside was trying to get out, everyone suddenly froze. The dog had sensed what no human eye ever could. Morning settled over Phoenix Sky Harbor in a haze of glass and sunlight, turning the wide windows into pale blue mirrors. Rolling suitcases whispered across polished floors, gates chimed boarding calls, and the smell of coffee clung to the air. In the middle of it all, a black Labrador in a K-9 vest walked at a measured pace, ears flicking, nose working non-stop. His name was Cooper, and this chaos was his routine. Beside him, Officer Daniel Brooks moved with the quiet focus of someone who had walked these corridors 1,000 times. His uniform was crisp, but his eyes were tired in the way only night shifts could carve. One hand rested lightly on Cooper's leash, not to control him, but to stay connected. Cooper didn't pull or wander, he flowed, reading the world in scents and small sounds most people never noticed. Families clustered at the check-in lines, parents juggling strollers and passports, while kids sprawled over suitcases like makeshift chairs. A businessman barked into his phone near a charging station, words clipped and rushed. Overhead, an announcement floated about a delayed flight, followed by a chorus of groans. Cooper's nose twitched once toward the food court, pausing on the smell of bacon, then moved on. Work first, treats later. They passed a row of self-check kiosks where a teenage boy held up his phone, secretly filming. "Dude, look at the police dog," he whispered to his friend, zooming in on Cooper's vest. Cameras never bothered the dog. His world narrowed to footsteps, bags, the faint tang of stress and sweat. Daniel watched his partner briefly, the corner of his mouth softening. "Easy day so far, buddy," he murmured. Near the main concourse, a young woman wrestled a navy blue suitcase off a crowded baggage cart. She had a backpack slung over one shoulder, hair pulled into a messy bun, boarding pass clenched between two fingers. Her name was Emily Turner, though no one here knew or cared yet. She checked her phone, bit her lip, and started toward the security line, dragging the suitcase behind her in short, hurried pulls. Cooper felt it before Daniel saw anything. His head jerked a fraction, nostrils flaring, body slowing as if someone had quietly tapped the brakes. A ripple of scent, faint but wrong, brushed past him like a draft. His paws planted a little deeper into the floor, ears angling toward the Navy suitcase wobbling over a crack in the tile. Daniel felt the leash stiffen and glanced down, attention sharpening. The crowd pressed in around them, swallowing small details. A gate agent laughed at a joke from a pilot. A toddler dropped a stuffed rabbit and howled. Somewhere nearby, a barista called out 3 lattes in a row. But Cooper had locked onto one thing, and one thing only. The Navy suitcase rolled closer, wheels rattling, handle clutched tight in Emily's hand. His breath came shorter, chest tightening around instinct. Then he barked. It wasn't a curious yip or a half-hearted woof. It tore out of him sharp and urgent, chest deep, the sound snapping across the concourse like a cracked whip. Heads turned instantly. Emily froze mid-step, eyes wide. The suitcase bumped against her heel as Cooper lunged forward, muscles surging under his vest. Daniel dug his heels in, grip tightening on the leash. Cooper's teeth didn't clamp down, but his nose drove straight toward the side of the suitcase like it was a magnet. He barked again, louder, the sound echoing off metal and glass. A little girl squealed and ducked behind her dad's leg. Someone farther back laughed nervously. A woman in a blazer muttered, "Seriously?" under her breath, rolling her eyes as she pulled her carry-on closer. "Bro, he's going crazy over a suitcase," the teenage boy whispered. Phone lifted, lens locked on Cooper. "I'm posting this. Airport K-9 freaks out over random bag." Nearby, a travel vlogger named Mia angled her camera, smiling into the lens. "Okay, you guys, something wild might be happening behind me," she chirped, framing Cooper and the Navy suitcase in the background. To her, it was content. To Cooper, it was a warning. Supervisor Grant appeared from the direction of the security lanes, coffee in hand, jaw already tight. He'd seen enough false alarms to last a career. "Brooks," he called out, voice edged, "what's going on with your dog?" Passengers shifted back, forming a loose ring around them. Some held their phones up, others just crossed their arms, unimpressed. To most of them, it looked like a dog having a bad morning. Daniel raised a calming hand, even as his pulse picked up. "Cooper, heel," he ordered, but there was no real conviction behind it. Cooper ignored the word, something he almost never did. He dug his paws in, hackles barely raised, nose pressed close to one specific panel on the suitcase. His bark turned into a low, steady growl, vibrating through the leash, up Daniel's arm, into his gut. Something in that sound made Daniel's skin crawl. Emily clutched the handle tighter, cheeks flushing under the weight of so many stares. "It's just clothes," she stammered, voice thin. "I swear, it's just clothes." A man in a baseball cap huffed, shaking his head. "They're spooking everybody over nothing," he said. Around them, eyes rolled, shoulders slumped, and a few people turned away, already bored. Only Cooper didn't look away. He couldn't. Whatever lived inside that suitcase had already chosen him as the first one to notice. "Bought." The ring of curious faces loosened as the first jolt of surprise faded into boredom. People shifted their weight, checked their phones, took tiny steps backward toward their own worries. Grant stepped in closer, coffee now dangling from his hand, gray brows pulled tight. Cooper tracked him with a quick glance, then swung his nose back to the suitcase as if reminding everyone what actually mattered. "All right, that's enough," Grant said, voice low but edged. "Brooks, pull him back. We're in the middle of the concourse, not a training yard." His gaze flicked to Emily, then to the crowd. "Ma'am, I apologize for the disturbance. He's usually more controlled than this." The words were polite, but the look he shot Cooper said something very different. Emily shook her head quickly, trying to force a smile that wouldn't come. "It's okay," she murmured, though her knuckles were white on the handle. "I mean, if he thinks something's wrong, you should check, right?" Her eyes darted from Cooper to Daniel, then to the phones pointed at her, like she'd been dragged into a movie she never auditioned for. Cooper didn't care about cameras or embarrassment. He leaned in again, nose pressed to the same strip of fabric on the side of the suitcase, drawing in air in short, focused pulls. Under the synthetic smell of the bag and detergent, something else pulsed like a faint heartbeat. His tail was stiff, not wagging, his body locked in a tension that Daniel recognized too well. "Let's run the bag through X-ray again," Daniel said, forcing calm into his tone. "Different angle, slower pass." Grant exhaled sharply through his nose. "We already have a full line at screening. You want to turn this into a production?" He glanced at the staring passengers, then back at Daniel. "You're spooking paying customers over a suitcase and a stubborn dog." A TSA officer named Harper rolled over an empty gray bin, sensing trouble like a change in weather. "I can slide it through my lane," she offered. "We'll be quick." Her eyes softened as she looked at Cooper. "If he's this keyed up, I'd rather know why, too." Grant hesitated a beat, then flicked his wrist. "Fine. One pass. Then we're done with this circus." Emily lifted the suitcase into the bin with both hands, shoulders trembling slightly from the weight or the moment. Even she wasn't sure which. Cooper tried to follow it, nails clicking on the tile until Daniel braced the leash. The bag disappeared into the tunnel of the X-ray machine, swallowed by moving belts and humming metal, screen flickering with shades of blue and green. Harper leaned toward the monitor, eyes narrowed. The image resolved. Folded clothes, a pair of sneakers, what looked like a toiletry kit, paper edges that could be books or magazines, no solid blocks, no wires, no obvious threats. She adjusted the contrast, rewound the scan, ran it slower. "Looks clean," she called out, glancing at Daniel. "Nothing jumps at me." A low murmur rippled through the bystanders. A man in the back snorted softly. "Told you," he said to his wife. "Dog just smelled somebody's airport nerves." Mia, the vlogger, held her phone higher, whispering into her mic. "Okay, update, drama dog false alarm, everyone back to regular programming." A few shoulders relaxed, a few eyes rolled again. The story they wanted was over. But Cooper didn't get the message. As soon as the suitcase emerged and Emily grabbed the handle, he lunged again, harder this time. Daniel's arm jerked forward with the sudden pull. Cooper's bark shattered the thin shell of relief that had begun to form around the group. He planted himself directly in front of the bag, chest heaving, paws splayed, blocking it like it was a live danger. "Brooks, that's enough," Grant snapped, patience finally cracking. "You saw the screen. There is nothing there. Heel your dog, apologize, and let this young lady get to her gate." He didn't raise his voice, but the steel inside it was unmistakable. To him, the matter was settled. Machine said safe. Protocol said move on. Anything else was just hassle. Daniel met his supervisor's eyes, then looked down at Cooper. The Labrador's nose trembled as he drew in the scent again, then let out a low, uneasy whine that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his ribs. This wasn't excitement. It wasn't confusion. It was something closer to dread. Daniel felt it tug at him, a weight pressing between instinct and orders. An older man standing near the stanchions watched with a frown, one hand resting on his cane. "Son," he called quietly to Daniel, "I flew in '02 when they ignored a guard dog doing that. We all regretted it." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise. Cooper turned briefly toward the sound, then back to the suitcase as if casting his vote. He chose the bag, and he chose it with his whole body. The concourse slowly loosened its grip on the moment, like a room exhaling after holding its breath too long. People drifted back toward their lines and screens, though most kept one eye on the dog that would not give up. Cooper stayed anchored to the suitcase, shoulders square, head low, breath moving steady through his nose. Whatever he smelled, it had wrapped itself around his mind. Daniel felt the leash hum with that focus, a faint vibration from muscle to bone. He knew what Grant wanted him to do. Call it, apologize, move on. He also knew the way Cooper's body read danger. This wasn't the sharp electric stance he took for explosives. It was tighter, deeper, like he was listening with his whole skin. That difference tugged hard at Daniel's training and something older than training. "Officer Brooks," Grant said quietly, the edge gone, replaced by warning. "We have a clear scan. That's not nothing. You keep pushing, you'd better have a reason when the reports hit my desk." Cooper gave his own answer before Daniel could. He shifted nearer the suitcase, chest nearly brushing it, nose pressed so close his whiskers flattened against the fabric. A low rumble built in his chest, not loud, but stubborn. Emily's voice shook as she spoke. "If he thinks something's in there, just check it," she said, eyes shiny but steady. "I don't want trouble. I just want to get home." Her fingers slipped slightly on the handle. Cooper's ears flicked toward the sound, then reset on the scent, leaking from that one narrow strip by the zipper. To him, the handle meant nothing. The seam was what mattered. "Harper," Daniel called, keeping his gaze on Cooper. "You got an inspection table open?" The TSA officer nodded, already flagging another agent to take her lane. Grant sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "We'll do this in secondary screening," he said at last. "Away from the crowd. If this blows up into a complaint, Brooks, you own it." Cooper's tail did not move, but something in his eyes seemed to settle. They walked as a small knot through the terminal, past a wall of windows where planes slid along the tarmac like quiet giants. The chatter of the concourse faded behind them, replaced by the softer echo of a narrower hall. Cooper stayed close to Daniel's leg, glance flicking between the suitcase and each passing doorway, cataloging sounds the human ear barely registered. Behind them, Mia followed at a distance, camera lowered now. The secondary screening room was bright and plain, just white walls, a steel table, and humming equipment. The door swung shut with a soft thud, cutting off the outside noise. Cooper stepped in first, circling once, scanning corners out of habit before his attention snapped back to the suitcase placed on the table. Here, without the crowd, his breathing sounded louder, each inhale a measured choice. Emily hovered near the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. "I packed it myself," she whispered, more to the floor than to anyone. "Books, clothes, snacks for Mom. That's it." Daniel heard her, but his eyes stayed on Cooper. The dog had hopped his front paws onto the edge of the table now, nose hovering just above the fabric. His tail remained still, body pointed like an arrow at the same narrow section of the bag. "Unzip it," Grant said, folding his arms, though his voice had lost some of its earlier impatience. "Let's show the dog there's nothing to worry about." Daniel slid on a pair of gloves, fingers steady, and pulled the zipper slowly around 3 sides. The suitcase opened like a book, revealing exactly what Emily had described. Folded shirts, a paperback or two, a clear bag of trail mix half crushed against a hoodie. Normal. All of it normal. For a moment, the room seemed to take a breath of relief. Then Cooper broke the illusion. He ignored the clothes, ignored the trail mix, and leaned over the opened lid, nose diving toward the inside wall of the suitcase. He pressed his snout against the lining with sudden urgency, sniffing hard, then pulled back. The whine that slipped out of him was sharper now, almost frustrated. He pawed at the fabric, claws catching on the stitching. "Cooper," Daniel said softly, "what are you telling me?" The dog didn't look at him. His entire focus tunneled into the thin wall of the suitcase, as if the rest of the world had dimmed. He pawed again, more insistent this time. The lining shifted just slightly under the pressure, enough for Daniel to see a tiny ripple, like something solid tucked behind loose skin. He felt a chill crawl under his collar. He touched the lining with his gloved hand, pressing where Cooper had scratched. The panel flexed in a way normal suitcase fabric didn't. Somewhere within that thin space, a sound answered back, faint but undeniable. A tiny thump, then another, like knuckles on hollow plastic. Daniel froze. Cooper's ears shot forward, eyes locking onto that spot with fierce certainty. The low growl returned, rolling slow and steady from his chest. Grant's arms dropped to his sides. Emily clapped a hand over her mouth. The room fell into a silence so complete that even the hum of the fluorescent seemed to fade. Daniel looked at Cooper, then at the suitcase, and knew there was no going back to routine now. "Get me a cutting tool," he said quietly. "Careful," he added, eyes never leaving that trembling patch of fabric. "There's something on the other side of this, and it's listening." Harper returned with a small utility knife and a pair of trauma shears, her face several shades paler than when she'd left. She laid them on the metal table, as if setting down something sacred. Cooper watched every movement, his nose still hovering just above the trembling patch of lining. The air in the room felt heavier now, thicker, like it had to be pushed in and out of their lungs. Daniel picked up the shears first, choosing the blunt tip over the sharp point of the knife. "Slow," he murmured mostly to himself, but Cooper's ears flicked as if he understood. The dog shifted just enough to give Daniel space, then leaned his weight against the table's edge, anchoring himself. His tail stayed low, unmoving, a dark line of tension behind him. He was ready, but not relaxed. Emily stood pressed against the far wall, fingers gripping the strap of her backpack like a lifeline. Her eyes never left the suitcase. Grant moved closer, his usual authority stripped down to simple human worry. The hum of the ventilation, the click of the clock on the wall, even the distant muffled announcement outside seemed to fade. The only sound that mattered was the soft scrape of steel against fabric. The first cut was small, barely longer than a thumb. The shears slid through the lining with a faint ripping whisper. Cooper's nose followed the motion, then dropped lower. A tiny gasp escaped him, more breath, then sound, and his paws clenched against the metal. Something in that narrow slit had answered him, something warm sliding into the new crack of air like a sigh. Daniel paused, eyes flicking to Cooper. "You with me, buddy?" he asked quietly. Cooper didn't glance away from the cut. He leaned in, inhaling, then let out a low tremor of a whine that vibrated against Daniel's wrist. There was no fear in it, only urgency. Daniel took another breath and widened the opening, each snip revealing more of the stiff panel hidden beneath. As the fabric peeled back, the panel came into view. Smooth, molded plastic, too precise to be a repair job. A faint scuff ran across it, where Cooper's claws had dragged moments before. Daniel pressed his fingers against it and felt a difference in temperature, colder than the room. Then, just beneath his palm, there it was again. One soft tap, hesitant, then another, weaker, as if whoever was inside had nearly given up. Cooper reacted first. His head snapped toward Daniel's hand, eyes burning with sudden intensity. A deep growl rose up, not at any person in the room, but at the barrier keeping him from what he'd found. His teeth bared slightly, not in threat, but in a raw, instinctive protest. He shifted his weight forward, wanting closer, wanting this wall gone. "Okay," Daniel said, voice unsteady for the first time. "We're opening it now." Grant nodded once, silent. Harper stepped back, hand over her mouth. Emily's knees seemed to buckle, and she slid down the wall until she was almost sitting, lips moving soundlessly, some half-formed prayer she hadn't used since childhood. Cooper stayed right where he was, a black statue at the heart of the storm. Daniel switched to the knife, tracing along the seam where the panel met the suitcase frame. The plastic resisted, then gave with a faint crack as he pried it loose. A line of cool air rushed out, carrying a smell Cooper locked onto instantly. Sweat, stale breath, and something sharp with fear. The dog's ears tipped forward, and he let out a single sharp bark that bounced off the walls. The panel dropped inward with a hollow clatter, hitting something soft. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then a sound drifted out from the dark compartment, thin and ragged, a small, stuttering sob. Daniel reached in slowly, fingers brushing against fabric, then skin. Tiny fingers curled weakly around his wrist. He swallowed hard. "We've got a child," he said, the words scraping out of his throat. He lifted the little boy out, as carefully as if he were made of glass. The child's cheeks were flushed, hair damp and matted, eyes blinking against the light. A strip of tape hung loose around one wrist, as if whoever had tied it lost their nerve halfway through. Cooper immediately backed up a step, giving space, but his nose never stopped working, tracking every faint shift in the boy's scent. It was as if he were counting breaths. The boy's gaze darted around the room, wild at first, then locking onto the dark shape closest to him. "Dog," he whispered, voice hoarse, the single word breaking on its own weight. Cooper lowered his head slowly, bringing his eyes level with the child's. His tail made one small, cautious sweep, then another, as if promising the boy the danger had passed. The growl was gone now, replaced by something gentle and steady. Emily began to cry quietly, tears slipping down her face in stunned silence. Grant let out a breath that sounded almost like a sob, quickly turning away to call for medics. Harper pulled a blanket from a cabinet and draped it over the boy's shoulders, her hands shaking. Through it all, Cooper stayed close but careful, his body forming a soft barrier between the child and the open suitcase. From the moment that first bark echoed in the concourse, he had been right, and now the proof was breathing in front of them. The small medical bay felt like another world compared to the noisy concourse outside. The lights were softer here, the air cooler, laced with antiseptic instead of coffee and jet fuel. The little boy sat on the edge of the exam table, blanket around his shoulders, bare feet dangling. Cooper lay on the floor a few feet away, head on his paws, eyes never straying far from the child. A nurse checked the boy's pulse and shined a light gently into his eyes. "Dehydrated, scared, but stable," she murmured to Daniel. The boy flinched at the light, then settled when Cooper's tail gave a slow, reassuring thump against the linoleum. That faint sound seemed to ground him more than any medical equipment humming nearby. When the nurse stepped back, Daniel pulled a chair closer. "Hey, buddy," he said softly, keeping his voice low and slow. "My name's Daniel. This is Cooper. He's the one who found you." The boy's gaze slid to the dog again. His lips cracked into a tiny, uncertain smile. He barked?" the child whispered. It was loud. Cooper lifted his head, ears pricking at the boy's voice. He didn't move closer, just watched, as if giving the child the choice. After a moment, the boy slowly reached a hand toward him. Daniel waited, heart caught, until Cooper pushed his nose under the small palm with gentle certainty. The boy let out a shaky breath, something in his shoulders unclenching. "Can you tell me your name?" Daniel asked. There was a pause, then a small voice answered. "Tyler?" His eyes flickered to the door as if expecting someone else to appear. "Tyler, do you remember who put you in that suitcase?" Daniel kept his tone as soft as he could, letting Cooper's quiet presence do half the work. Tyler's fingers curled tighter into Cooper's fur. "The man," he murmured. "He had a blue jacket, not like yours, softer, like Dad's old one." He squinted as if replaying the memory. "He said we were playing hide-and-seek in a secret place. He smelled like that." His nose crinkled, and his hand shifted to Cooper's ear, searching for the right word. Cooper's nostrils flared, catching the faint trace of that remembered scent still clinging to Tyler's clothes. There it was again, the same sour mix he'd found in the lining of the suitcase, now anchored to this small, trembling body. His eyes narrowed, and a low huff slipped out, not a growl, just a quiet note of recognition. Grant stepped into the room with a tablet in hand, his expression set. "We pulled footage from baggage claim and the lower corridors," he said to Daniel. "There's someone matching the kid's description." He tilted the screen so they could see. On the grainy video, a man in a denim jacket walked just behind Emily, close enough to touch her bag. Tyler leaned forward, breath catching. "That's him," he blurted, pointing with a small, shaking finger. "He talked to me at the other airport, said my mom was waiting." Cooper pushed himself up, stepping closer to the tablet. His head tilted, and then his whole body stiffened. A deep, familiar growl rolled up from his chest, aimed at the flickering figure on the screen. The door opened again, and a woman in a dark blazer stepped inside, credentials clipped to her belt. Her hair was pulled back, eyes sharp but kind. "Special Agent Rachel Monroe, FBI," she introduced herself quietly. "Crimes against children. I was already en route on another case when we got the call." Her gaze landed on Cooper first, lingering with clear respect. Rachel reviewed the footage, then the suitcase photos, then the medical report, her brow tightening by degrees. "This isn't random," she said finally. We've been tracking a pattern of kids disappearing on connection flights. Parents swear they never left their site until baggage claim. She glanced at Tyler, then at Cooper. Until now, we never had one found alive at the point of transfer. She pulled up a database on her tablet, flipping through reports. 2 boys, 4 and 5, went missing in the last 3 months on similar routes, she continued. Both families passed through airports where a man in a denim jacket was caught on distant cameras. Just like this? Cooper's ears tipped forward at her tone, picking up the shift in the room's weight. The knot in Daniel's chest tightened. This wasn't just a miracle rescue. It was a crack in something much larger and uglier. He looked down at Cooper, who stood squarely between Tyler and the door, as if the child might be taken again at any moment. The dog's amber eyes were alert, unblinking, already searching for the next trace of that sour scent outside these walls. Rachel closed the tablet with a quiet click. "We're not done," she said, almost to herself. Then, to Tyler, she added gently, "You did so well. And your friend here?" She nodded toward Cooper. "He may have just blown open the case we've been praying for." Cooper didn't understand the words, but he felt the change in tone. Tyler slid off the exam table, blanket dragging. He wrapped his arms around Cooper's neck, burying his face in the dog's fur. Cooper stood perfectly still, absorbing the weight of the small body clinging to him. His tail swept once across the floor, slow and steady. The boy didn't say thank you, but he didn't have to. Cooper had already heard it in that first whisper. Dog. Q. The airport quieted in a different way once word spread that a child had been found. The usual noise was still there, but softer, as if the building itself was thinking. In the operations room, screens glowed with paused footage and maps. Cooper lay at Daniel's feet, chest rising slow, eyes half-lidded, but his ears stayed on a hair trigger, catching every sharp change in tone. Rachel stood at the central monitor, cycling through camera angles. "He didn't just appear with that suitcase," she said. "Someone brought it in, handed it off, moved it through." Her finger tapped the screen where the man in the denim jacket crossed baggage claim. Cooper's head lifted, eyes narrowing at the familiar figure. That scent still clung to his memory. On another screen, the Navy suitcase appeared on the carousel at Tyler's departure city, then again at Phoenix. Emily never touched it until after the layover. "There," Rachel noted. "See that?" A baggage cart rolled into frame, a worker in a reflective vest adjusting bags without looking at the tags too closely. Cooper's nose twitched, his body leaning unconsciously toward the screen. Daniel glanced down. "You smell something even through glass, don't you?" Cooper shifted to his feet, tail stiff, gaze locked on the worker's image. The man wore a ball cap, face partly turned away, but his posture carried the same sour echo the suitcase had. A label on the vest read, Ortega. As the cart moved, Cooper's claws clicked once against the floor, an impatient drum. They took him down to the baggage level, where conveyor belts hummed like low voices, and the air held the heavy scent of rubber, oil, and too many suitcases. Cooper walked ahead of Daniel now, nose working, weaving through metal supports and stacked carts. Each new odor washed over him, but he sifted ruthlessly, hunting for the one that matched the hollow of that hidden compartment. He paused near a fenced-off storage area, rows of unclaimed luggage lined up like quiet passengers. For a moment he did nothing, just stood, letting the tide of scents settle. Then, without warning, he turned sharply left, pulling Daniel toward a row of gray and black bags. His steps grew shorter, more exact, tail fixed like a pointer. The air here smelled closer to the panel, to fear pressed into fabric. Cooper stopped at a medium gray suitcase shoved half behind a larger one. There was nothing special about it to the human eye. No bright stickers, no broken handle. Just another bag, waiting. But Cooper's reaction was instant. His head dropped, nose brushing the zipper seam, and a hard bark punched out of him, echoing against concrete walls. This was it. The trail had doubled back here. Miguel Ortega appeared from around a stack of crates, pushing an empty cart, surprise flashing across his face as he saw the group at the storage rack. "You folks lost something?" he asked, voice too light. Cooper swung his head toward him, nostrils flaring. That sour trace was stronger now, woven into the man's sweat and the faded fabric of his gloves. A growl rose quietly, vibrating through his ribs. Daniel stepped between Miguel and the dog out of habit, but he felt Cooper's body language shift from curiosity to recognition. Rachel's eyes narrowed. "How long has that suitcase been back here?" she asked, pointing. Miguel shrugged, avoiding Cooper's stare. "Stuff comes and goes. People miss flights. We just hold it." His words were smooth, but Cooper wasn't listening. He had locked back on the gray bag. When they opened it, there was no child inside, no hidden panel with small hands. Instead, they found cameras disguised as power adapters, tiny microphones, notebooks filled with flight numbers, and printed lists of passengers traveling with kids. The scent inside was sharp with ink and plastic, but under all of it was that same signature Miguel carried, the same note Cooper had chased since the first suitcase. Rachel set a slim laptop on a nearby crate and powered it up. Cooper sat beside Daniel, head just above table height, watching lines of code scroll by. To him, it was meaningless light, but the tension in the room told him enough. Each click of the keys made the muscles in his shoulders tighten. The laptop smelled like the gray suitcase, like the denim jacket, like something that wasn't finished. On the screen, a map populated with tiny pins. Airports across several states lit up, some red, some yellow. Rachel zoomed in, her mouth a thin line. "These aren't just notes," she said. "They're tracking routes, families, connections, which airports have weak spots, which workers are on which shift." Her finger hovered over Phoenix, glowing the same as the rest. Cooper's tail gave a slow, troubled sweep. Daniel rested a hand on Cooper's neck, feeling the steady thrum beneath the fur. "You picked one suitcase out of all of this," he said quietly. "One kid out of how many?" Cooper leaned into the touch, eyes still on the moving map. He didn't know numbers or patterns, but he understood that the job wasn't over. The sour scent that had led him here still trailed off into the distance, thin as a thread, but unbroken. For now he would wait, gathering his strength until the next suitcase called his name. Night pushed in around the airport, softening the hard lines of glass and concrete. The daytime rush had thinned into scattered travelers and tired staff. In the security office, the light from the monitors cast a pale wash over Cooper's fur. He sat by Daniel's chair, ears alert, as Rachel laid out the plan one last time. Every word seemed to tighten the air a little more. "We use their own pattern against them," Rachel said, tapping a map of the terminal. Same style suitcase, same locker location, Miguel's laptop flagged. If Lucas is still here, he will not be able to resist checking the drop. Daniel nodded, but his hand drifted to Cooper's collar, steadying himself as much as the dog. Cooper's tail gave one slow, measured sweep. They moved through quieter corridors now, the echo of their footsteps stretching long. Cooper trotted at Daniel's side, nose sampling the cooler night air, leaking through automatic doors. The scent of exhaust and concrete drifted in from the parking structure beyond. Underneath it, faint and familiar, ran that sour note he had chased all day, thin but there. His pace picked up without anyone telling him to. In the lower concourse, the row of lockers looked harmless, just metal doors and scuffed paint. A decoy suitcase, almost a twin to Emily's Navy bag, sat inside one unit, tag tucked where a handler would expect. Cooper sniffed it once, more out of formality than concern, then turned his head away. This bag was empty of fear. The danger would be the person who reached for it, not the shell itself. They left the locker area under quiet watch, agents blending into the background. Cameras adjusted, angles sharpened. Cooper lay near a column with Daniel, appearing at rest, though his eyes never fully closed. He listened to the rhythm of the building, luggage wheels, distant escalators, the soft buzz of lights. He waited for the one sound that did not fit, the one step that carried the wrong smell. It came as a shift in scent before a shape, a trace of that same cologne and detergent overlaid with the cold tang of nervous sweat. Cooper's head lifted. Around the corner, a man in a denim jacket appeared, walking too casually for the late hour. Lucas glanced left, right, then toward the lockers, his gaze lingering on the one with the decoy suitcase. Cooper's muscles coiled. Lucas checked his watch, then moved toward the locker with a deliberate calm that felt staged, as if he were performing for an unseen audience. His hand slid toward the handle. Before Daniel could step out, a uniformed security guard approached from the opposite direction. "Evening," the guard said lightly. "Need help with something?" The name on his tag read Porter. Cooper's ears snapped back at the tone. Sam Porter smiled, the kind of easy grin meant to put people at ease. "Locker jammed sometimes," he added. "Let me get that for you." But as he reached past Lucas, his eyes flicked once toward the ceiling cameras, then away. Cooper caught the shift, the shared understanding in that glance. The sour smell was not just on Lucas. It wove under Sam's cologne, hiding in the cotton of his sleeves. Cooper surged to his feet, a sharp bark ripping through the quiet hall. Daniel stepped out at once, badge up, voice firm. "Step away from the locker, both of you." Lucas froze, hand halfway to the lock. Sam's smile faltered for only a heartbeat before he lifted both palms, a little too slow, as if buying time. Cooper's growl deepened, now split between two targets. Rachel and two agents moved in from the far end, closing the gap. Lucas went pale, eyes darting toward an exit sign. "I was just getting my bag," he stammered. "I do not even know this man." Sam scoffed, but there was sweat gathering at his hairline. "These guys again?" he muttered. "Dog barked at the wrong suitcase once. Now everyone's a suspect." Cooper took a hard step toward him. The Labrador ignored Lucas's words completely. He cut across the space, nose swinging between the guard's boots and the locker door. The stink of that hidden network clung strongest to Sam's keyring, metal still warm from use. Cooper's bark exploded again, this time right at the guard's hip. It was the same bark he had given that first suitcase. Not fear. Accusation. Sam shifted back, but the act slipped. His eyes hardened, jaw tightening, the friendly guard mask dropping off in one clean motion. For a heartbeat, he looked at the decoy bag, at Lucas, at the agents, calculating. Then he moved, hand darting toward his radio, not to call for help, but to press something clipped behind it. Daniel lunged, knocking his arm away. The device clattered to the floor, screen flashing. In the chaos of that second, Lucas bolted. Cooper's head jerked toward the fleeing scent, but Daniel's grip on the leash held firm. "Porter first!" Rachel shouted. Agents tackled the guard, keys and phone scattering across the tile. Cooper stayed planted, chest heaving, eyes locked on Sam until the cuffs clicked shut. Only then did his body ease, just slightly. The first rotten root of the tree had been pulled. As they led Sam away, the hall slowly settled, the echo of the struggle fading into the building's usual hum. Lucas was still out there, somewhere in the maze of concrete and steel. Cooper stood beside Daniel, nose pointed toward the parking levels where the denim scent drifted faintly. His tail lifted, not in play, but in quiet resolve. This was not finished. But for the moment, one more mask had fallen, and the dog who would not stop barking had been right again. Morning came in slowly, like the airport was reluctant to wake up after the night it had just lived through. Sunlight slipped over the mountains and poured through the high glass windows, softening the sharp edges of the terminal. Cooper walked a step ahead of Daniel, paws quiet on the floor, K-9 vest back in place. He moved more tired than usual, but his eyes were clear. His job was never really done. They had caught Lucas before dawn, not with a chase through crowds, but with cold camera angles and patient watching. He tried to slip. Out through a service exit near the rental cars, denim jacket traded for a hoodie. Cooper had picked up his scent in the parking garage stairwell, nose dragging Daniel toward a door just as it opened. One sharp bark, 3 agents waiting, and the last loose piece of the chain finally snapped. In the command room, Rachel and her team worked through the night, digging through Miguel's laptop and Sam's phone. Each new folder opened into another kind of horror: addresses, dates, names of children who never made their connecting flights. Yet, under all of that darkness, a few bright pins appeared on the board. 2 kids found in a rented house miles from the airport, another intercepted at a bus station. Every lead pointed back to that first suitcase and one stubborn dog. By mid-morning, the story had already slipped beyond the walls of Phoenix Sky Harbor. Mia's video, the one that started as a joke about a dramatic airport dog, had been recut with a different tone. It showed Cooper barking at Emily's suitcase, people rolling their eyes, then a still frame of the hidden compartment and the small shape inside. There was no audio in that part, only a quiet caption. He didn't stop until someone listened. In a quiet family room off the medical bay, Tyler sat between his parents, a stuffed airplane clutched in one hand, the other buried in Cooper's fur. His mother's eyes were red-rimmed, her fingers never leaving the boy's shoulders, as if he might vanish if she let go. His father had both hands on his knees, leaning in as Tyler explained in broken sentences how the game had turned into a box that wouldn't open. Cooper lay pressed against his leg, a silent anchor. When they stood to leave with an escort, Tyler turned back. "Can he come with us?" the boy asked, eyes hopeful in a way that twisted something deep in Daniel's chest. "He has to stay here and protect other kids," Daniel answered gently. "But you get to tell people he saved you. Deal?" Tyler leaned down and wrapped both arms around Cooper's neck, cheek pressed into black fur. Cooper stayed perfectly still, then gave one soft lick to the boy's wrist. Later, standing near the big windows that overlooked the runway, Daniel watched a plane lift into the bright sky, wheels folding away, like the final line of a story. Beside him, Cooper sat steady, gaze tracking the ascending shape. Sergeant Grant approached with a folded newspaper in hand. He cleared his throat once before speaking, as if the words did not come easy. "Front page," he said, holding it out. "They got your partner's good side." The headline stretched across the top. K-9 foils child trafficking scheme at Sky Harbor. Below it was a photo of Cooper, ears up, eyes focused, a little boy's hand resting on his back. Grant stared at the image for a second, then looked down at the real dog at his feet. "I was wrong yesterday," he admitted quietly. About the barking, about the suitcase, about all of it. Cooper blinked once, then turned his head back toward the glass, as if accepting the apology without needing it. "Everyone out there thought you were overreacting," Daniel murmured, more to his partner than to anyone else. They rolled their eyes, checked their phones, waited for you to shut up. He reached down and rubbed the space behind Cooper's ear, feeling the warmth of living muscle under the vest. "You kept going anyway. Good thing you don't take a vote." Cooper leaned into his hand, tail giving a slow, contented thump against the floor. Down below, people streamed in and out of the terminal doors, dragging their own suitcases, carrying their own worries. Some of them looked up as they passed, noticing the K-9 team behind the glass. A little girl on the sidewalk pointed with both hands, her mouth forming an excited O. Her father lifted his phone to take a picture, then gave a small, grateful nod when Daniel met his eyes. There were no words, but the meaning was clear. They felt safer knowing the dog was watching. Back inside, Rachel stepped up beside them, tablet tucked under her arm. "Interpol and 3 other agencies jumped on this overnight," she said. "With the data we pulled, they'll be shutting down pieces of this network for a long time." She looked down at Cooper, her expression softening. "You didn't just save one kid today, big guy. You put the first crack in a wall we thought we'd never break." Cooper didn't understand the scope of that praise, or the way people now said his name with a kind of awe. He understood the faint trace of fear that had been scrubbed from the suitcase but still lingered in his memory. He understood the relaxed weight in Tyler's arms when the boy had hugged him, the way his breathing had finally slowed. He understood Daniel's hand resting a little longer than usual between his shoulders, fingers spread wide in quiet thanks. As another plane roared down the runway and lifted free, Daniel exhaled, some of the tightness in his chest easing. "This won't be the last time someone thinks you're just making noise," he said softly. "But next time you bark at a suitcase, I won't doubt you for a second." Cooper glanced up at him, amber eyes calm and sure, then turned back to the moving world beyond the glass. His tail swept once more, steady and sure. The airport hummed on, and the dog, who refused to be ignored, settled in to watch over the next suitcase that dared to pass his nose. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. If you think Cooper is a true hero, just drop a simple 1 in the comments. If you want to see more stories like this, type 0. Your comment helps this story reach more people, and it lets me know you're here with us. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next real-life story of courage, loyalty, and the heroes who walk beside us. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter.